I discovered the haunted secret the Mexican government is hiding. Changed my life forever. I never should have opened that door. It was just a regular Thursday when I stumbled upon it. A seemingly innocuous door tucked away in the back of an old library, hidden behind stacks of dusty books. My heart raced as I pushed it slightly ajar. The chill that hit me was unnatural. A cold that wrapped around my bones and made my skin crawl. The air was thick with decay and the scent of mildew. Shadows danced in the corners, playing tricks on my eyes. I leaned in closer, and that's when I heard Ida faint whisper. A voice that slid across my skin like ice. Felt alive, like it knew everything about me. I stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind me. The room was dark, just a sliver of light from a cracked window. The walls were lined with old maps and strange illustrations. Figures with elongated limbs and haunting eyes stared back at me. Every sound seemed magnified, my breathing loud against the silence. I could feel my heart pounding, each thump echoing in the eerie stillness. I tried to shake the unease, but there was something about this place that felt wrong. Everything was wrong. Odd noises whispered in the dark, like someone or something was watching me. As I moved deeper, I noticed objects shifting on the cluttered desk. Papers fluttered, as if touched by an invisible hand. My pulse quickened. Then I saw a glimpse of something in the corner, a shadow that didn't belong. My stomach flipped. I wasn't alone. I took a step back, my hands trembling, cold sweat pooling at my palms. The fear gripped me tighter now, like icy fingers wrapping around my throat, cutting off my breath. I wanted to scream, but the sound got stuck in my throat. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed behind me, a door slamming shut. I whipped around, but there was no one there, just the suffocating darkness closing in around me. The whispers grew louder, swirling and twisting, filling my mind with dread. I felt trapped, caught between reality and something far more sinister. And then, as the shadows deepened, I saw Ida's figure emerging from the darkness. It moved with a terrible grace, and my heart stopped. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't obey. I stood frozen, staring into the abyss, and the figure stared back. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stepped closer, its form shifting like smoke caught in a choking wind. I felt a paralyzing certainty that this was no mere specter. It was a manifestation of the very dread that coiled around me, festering in the corners of my mind. The air thickened with a stench of rot and despair, and I felt bile rise in my throat. What do you seek? The whisper hissed, a serpent's tone laced with malice. The word echoed in the cavernous silence, twisting around me like an invisible rope. It beckoned, tugging at the edges of my sanity, daring me to respond. My breath quickened, but all that escaped my lips was a strangled gasp. The shadows lengthened, whispering secrets of torment and sorrow in a language that felt both familiar and forbidden. My surroundings blurred, the walls closing in as the figure hovered before me. I caught a glimpse of its face, if it could be called that. Hollow eyes sunk deep into its skull, and a mouth that stretched impossibly wide, as if screaming without sound. Come closer. It beckoned, the hollowed wind of its voice tracing shivers down my spine. Instinct screamed for me to run, yet my legs felt melded to the floor, as if an unseen force had rooted me to this accursed space. The figure continued its approach, each stride deliberate, and I counted the seconds hanging heavy in the dread-laden air. 1, 2, 3. Then, the oppressive darkness shifted. The room felt alive, as if the shadows themselves stirred with malintent, past ghosts clawing their way forward, desperate to break free from their suffocating prison. The whispers morphed into incoherent murmurs, filling the void of sound, the language of the damned, echoing through my mind like a sickening chant. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I tore my gaze away, breaking whatever spell bound me. I stumbled backward, crashing into a stack of books that toppled over with a thunderous crash. The noise seemed to awaken something far more terrible, as the whispers transformed into a cacophony of panic and rage. "Fool!" the ghostly figure shrieked, its voice merging with the cries of forgotten souls, resonating off the walls. "You cannot close the door. You have awakened the past." Lightning flickered through the cracked window, illuminating the room for a fleeting moment. And in that instant, I glimpsed the horror lurking behind the figure. Shadowy faces materialized, eyes wide with agony, mouths agape, yet soundlessly screaming. They floated just beyond the figure, a swirling mass of tormented souls, writhing in a ghastly dance of despair. Suddenly, the ground beneath me quaked, and I lost my balance, the air around me thickening like molasses. I tried to stand but felt ice-cold fingers tearing at my clothes, pulling me back into the depths of their tortured realm. Desperation clawed at my heart, and I released a primal scream, echoing through the oppressive silence and the chaos. I caught a glimpse of the door behind Meth's only possible escape. My heart pounding, I lunged forward, pushing against the unseen forces that sought to drag me down into the dark abyss. Just as my fingers brushed the cold metal of the doorknob, a suffocating silence descended, and the figure loomed over me, impossibly close. "Join us," it whispered, its breath a cold wind against my ear, "or lose yourself forever." I yanked the door open without looking back, tumbling through the threshold into blinding light. But as the door slammed shut behind me, the whispers bled into a heartbeat, identifying something far worse, something I had left behind. And it wasn't done with me yet. The brightness enveloped me like a shroud, the sudden light a painful contrast to the darkness I had just escaped. I stumbled forward, disoriented, trying to piece together the remnants of what had just transpired. My breaths were ragged, desperate gasps, as if the air itself could still hold the remnants of that malevolent aura. I could still feel the chill of its presence clinging to me like a second skin. I blinked rapidly, allowing the harsh light to steady my vision. The walls of the room were no longer cracked and stained with age. They were pristine, glimmering under fluorescent bulbs. Yet the faux normalcy felt like a mirage, something fabricated to lure me into a place that could trap my sanity just as effectively as the dark had. That's when I noticed the faint hum. It was mechanical yet unsettling, reverberating through the floor and seeping into my bones. The air was thick, infused with a metallic tang that prickled my senses. I was in a corridor lined with sterile white doors, each sealed and silent, but the oppressive nature of the corridor left no doubt. I was not alone. The hum intensified, fluctuating between frequencies, laced with distorted echoes of laughter and cries. I stumbled toward the nearest door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. "What is wrong with me?" I whispered into the unnerving silence, unsure who or what I was trying to convince. I pulled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked tight, a powerless sentinel holding grim secrets behind its facade. That's when I heard it again, the whisper. It slithered through the cracks of my consciousness, weaving a tapestry of despair that drowned out my reason. "You can never escape what you awaken." Panic clawed at the back of my mind, pushing me further into frenzy. Frantically, I moved along the corridor, hands brushing against the cold walls as if searching for an anchor, a sign, anything that could dispel this waking nightmare. I glanced through a window in one of the doors, my breath catching in my throat. Beyond it was a room filled with dim red lights, casting grotesque shadows of figures engaged in a relentless dance on the walls. For a moment, I thought they were alive, flesh and blood, but the way they moved clipped motions, limbs jerking at unnatural angles betrayed their true nature. They weren't human. They were marionettes, tethered to strings unseen, their expressions frozen in unending agony. I pressed my face closer to the glass, horrified by the sight. Suddenly, the cacophony of murmurs rose to a fever pitch, striking a singular note of dread that resonated deep within my core. It felt as if the building itself was alive, its very structure alive with maleficent intent. I took a step back, trying to shake the vision from my mind, but the whispers escalated, threading into my thoughts. Clawing at the edges of my sanity, I turned to flee down the corridor, desperation fueling my flight, clutching my head as if trying to crush the sounds echoing in my skull. Out of nowhere, the humming ceased, replaced with a piercing silence that struck terror in my heart. I paused, the stillness suffocating, and then I heard Ida's voice, not the whisper but an unmistakable tone. "Come back," it demanded, deep and resonant, filled with eerie authority, echoing down the corridor like a summons from the depths of hell itself. That I spun around, searching for the source, the air growing heavier with dread. From the shadows, a figure emerged, its form ethereal yet imposing. The face, a grotesque reflection of the visage I had seen earlier, looked different now, more defined, more real. It beckoned me forward, fingers elongated, glinting with a hunger that sent shivers coursing through my body. "Do not misunderstand freedom," it said, its voice almost soothing, wrapping around me with an intoxicating aura. "You have a choice to make." I took a step backward, but my body felt shackled, as if invisible cords wrapped around my limbs, holding me captive in the presence of this entity. "What do you want from me?" I cried, panic surging as the figure moved closer, its hollow gaze penetrating my very soul. "The truth," it whispered, each syllable dripping with lethal promise, "reveals itself in layers. Did you think walking through that door meant you were free? You are merely peeling back the layers of your own torment." Behind me, I felt the weight of the corridor pressing against my back as it started to pulse, the walls breathing as shadows coalesced into darker shapes, congealing into a mass of hopelessness that sought to envelop me. The dread surged again, flooding my senses, and I turned as a shriek tore through the stillness, echoing between the doors. I would have to choose, but what if the choice wasn't mine to make? And just as the figure reached out, its long fingers grazing my arm, I realized the true horror of the moment. It was no longer about escape. It was about what I had already become. With every heartbeat, the walls closed in, shadows poured through the cracks, and I felt myself slipping as they enveloped me, yanking at my body and soul, pulling me toward the deepest abyss, where the truth awaited, and it was far darker than I ever could have imagined. I blinked, and for a fleeting second, the darkness that pulled at my essence seemed almost welcoming, a siren's embrace whispering forgotten secrets. The entity's fingers brushed against me, tracing patterns of ice that sent tremors rolling through my body. "You will understand," it cooed, its voice a sickly sweet promise that made my heart race. As I fought against the pull of the shadows, images flooded my mind, memories woven with the threads of terror. Faces, once familiar and now twisted in agony, flashed before my friends, all lost to the depths of this accursed place. I could almost hear their voices crying out for help, begging for release as the shadows mocked their pleas, feeding on the remnants of despair they left behind. I screamed, adrenaline surging as I tore away from the grasp of the phantasm. I sprinted back down the corridor, the sterile brightness now seeming a cruel joke, a lie wrapped in forced comfort. Each door I passed seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own, discordant with the urgency of my escape. I reached the nearest door and banged against it, yelling for it to open. The air was thick with dread. I realized all at once I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making. I had walked willingly into this room of horrors, blind to the truth lurking behind each synchronized breath of the building. My fingers gripped the cold metal knob, twisting with desperation. It yielded, swinging open to reveal a dimly lit room that generated an eerie hum. Inside, my eyes adjusted to the darkness, revealing crude drawings plastered on the walls, the scrawled depictions of gnarled faces and twisted bodies seemingly trapped inside cages. Each image echoed the pain I felt, the disorientation of my mind spiraling further into madness. "What is this place?" I murmured, stepping cautiously inside, dread curling in my gut. The door slammed shut behind me with a jarring thud, locking me within this crypt of despair. The buzzing sound intensified, morphing into a chant that permeated the very fabric of the room. Shadows twisted and writhed, becoming figures that reached toward me from the edges of my vision. Demanding to be acknowledged, in the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a small metal box, rusted and adorned with ancient symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. A heartbeat synced to my terror. The symbols glimmered, drawing me closer despite the instinctual dread gnawing at my mind. With shaking hands, I lifted the box, the chill of its surface matching the icy grip of fear around my heart. The chanting grew louder, each syllable resonating as if the walls themselves were alive, vibrating in response to my touch. I hesitated, my breath hitching, before prying open the creaking lid. A miasma of dust erupted from within, and in the swirling haze, something glimmered. A collection of photographs, faded yet hauntingly vivid, slipped into view. That I pulled them out one by one, the images sending electric shocks of recognition through my body. Each face was one I knew, each photograph capturing moments of laughter, happiness, friendship, and the last ones, taken in places I had once visited, showed those same faces contorted in terror, their eyes wide with unfathomable dread. "Why?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the oppressive silence that flooded the room. "Because this is where they found their truth," the voice of the entity echoed, an unnerving intimacy nestled within the air, steeped in a dark familiarity. "And now it is your turn." The photographs slipped from my fingers, scattering across the floor, each one landing with a heavy thud that felt like a heart-beaten, unsettling heartbeat that synced with the oppressive hum vibrating inside me. As I crouched to pick them up, I suddenly felt a cold breath against the back of my neck, something far more tangible than the shadows that danced along the walls. "Turn around." The voice commanded, filled with an authority that rumbled through my very bones. Every instinct told me not to flee, to live. Yet my body betrayed me. I turned slowly, dread coiling tighter as my eyes met the grotesque reflection staring back at me. A smirk twisted across its deformed face that mirrored my own, but warped in horror. The entity loomed larger, flickering between states of ethereal disarray and palpable menace. I was trapped in a living nightmare. With a leap that suspended time, its elongated fingers reached for my throat, tightening around my windpipe. I gasped for air, the shadows behind it swelling, revealing shapes that I recognized only too well. Every face from the photographs, every scream held in that confined space. The truth began to bleed into my consciousness. Overwhelming meth nightmare was not just a product of my fear but a cruel reflection of my past, my choices, the very essence of my existence. And as darkness descended, my heartbeat quickening in the suffocating pressure, I realized with horrifying clarity. I had not awakened the darkness, I had become it. In that moment of realization, the door behind me shattered, splintering into 1,000 pieces as a blinding light erupted in the room. I squinted against the brightness, feeling a force contrary to the shadows pulling me, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I could escape. But as it enveloped me, I felt a cold hand wrap around my heart, and I knew that whatever truth awaited me beyond the light promised a horror more profound than I could comprehend. The shadows erupted, a cacophony of screams echoing the truth I had unwittingly unleashed. And in the swirling, chaotic maelstrom, I could feel the walls start to close in on me, suffocating, consuming. The darkness raged like an unforgiving storm. Then, in an instant, everything went silent and I stood alone in a void. No light, no shadows, just me and the weight of my choices pressing down, leaving me to wonder if escape was ever truly an option. The overwhelming realization washed over me that the choice made when I first stepped through that door was far from over. From the darkness, a whisper arose, resonant and chilling. "The choice is timeless, and you will face it again." And just before the void swallowed me whole, everything faded into a chilling echo of laughter, swirling until I could no longer tell where I ended, and the darkness began. I was adrift in an inky blackness, every fleeting moment mangling my sense of self. The whispered promise of the entity still echoed in the recesses of my mind, its morbidly sweet coaxing lingering like a rancid perfume. I felt unmoored, like a ship lost at sea, rocking in a tumultuous storm of dread. Instinctively, I cried out for help, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive void that enveloped me. Time lost its meaning. Familiar thoughts spiraled away, replaced by a growing hysteria as I clawed against the darkness, trying to summon the light that had once threatened to free me. Panic surged through my veins as I realized I had become one with the shadows. The icy fingers of despair wrapped tightly around my heart. Just when I thought I would lose myself completely, a flicker of light emerged, a silvery glimmer hanging delicately in the depths of my despair. Driven by urgency, I reached for it, stumbling forward through the void. The light intensified, pulsating like a heartbeat, and I could feel my surroundings shift. I could hear Ida low, drumming chant reverberating, drawing closer, the rhythm almost alive. Then, with a sudden rush of clarity, I emerged from the darkness, sprawled on the cold, damp floor of a different room. My breath quickened as I blinked against the dimness, heart hammering in my chest. The room was small, lined with crumbling stone walls and a flickering overhead light that buzzed with an unsettling resonance, creating an atmosphere thick enough to choke on. Unearthly shapes darted in the corners of my vision, flitting just out of sight like startled animals. I pressed my palms against the floor, grounding myself as memories tumbled forth, images of frantic nights spent hiding in the dark, the faces of my friends swallowed by shadows, laughter turned to screams. No longer was I alone. I sensed the weight of a presence on the edge of my consciousness, watching, lurking. It skimmed the boundaries of my mind, and I could almost feel its breath brushing skin cold, relentless. The thought petrified me, pounding against my skull. I was no stranger to sanctuaries of despair. The walls seemed to pulse with the echoes of tortured souls, a mausoleum of regrets. Gathering every ounce of courage, I stood slowly, bracing myself against the wall. Around me lay relics of other lives, remnants discarded like husks. Shattered mirrors, broken toys, photographs burnt along the edges, the ghostly images of those I'd lost creeping like shadows into my thoughts. One photograph caught my eye, almost fluttering against the stone floor, or a picture of me with my friends, laughing, carefree. I approached, heart racing as the laughter echoed faintly in my memory. As I bent to pick it up, the air grew denser, vibrating with an impending sense of doom. The flickering light above began to dim, plunging the room into an unsettling twilight. A whisper cascaded through the air, familiar, yet profoundly alien. Do you see them? It questioned, a voice like shattered glass sifting through my thoughts, curling around my heart, squeezing. Do you understand the price of truth? I clutched the photograph, my heart thrumming in my chest. What do you want from me? I gasped. The shadows deepened, swirling as if they had a will of their own. They coalesced into a singular form, recently familiar, a visage I recognized but had hoped to forget. It stood before me, my own face twisted in agony, an apparition born of my darkest regrets. Its eyes, blackened void, stared into mine, and in that instant, the gravity of my reality crashed down like a tidal wave. Your truth lies buried here. It hissed, voice a blend of my own, dripping with scorn and anguish. You cannot escape what you are, what you have done. A cacophony of whispers erupted around me, like angry spirits, each voice slicing through the haze of my mind, revealing terrors long buried. I felt their pain as though it were my own. Each hushed accusation, each gut-wrenching betrayal I had endured, they were all glossing over my conscience. The atmosphere stiffened, and suddenly the walls began to close in, pressing heavily against my chest. Clutching the photograph, I steeled myself against the urge to scream, realizing the truth behind the entity's torment. It was me who had led my friends to their doom. My choices opened the doors to this hell, and their faces haunted me, demanding acknowledgement. But even in that realization, the shadows pressed against me, swirling, taunting. The twisted reflection of myself pointed, grinning menacingly as the fracture between past and present deepened. Face it, do you feel it? The darkness will always find you. The voice spat, venomous yet threaded with desperation. The room began to warp, like a hypnotic spiral, overwhelming my senses. I stumbled backward, eyes wide, only to see a door materializing out of thin air, a door pulsing with sickly light that beckoned me to escape. But as I moved toward it, the photograph slipped from my fingers into the abyss of shadows, echoing a soft, mournful plea that twisted my gut into knots. Choose. The entity howled, forcing me against the wall. Stay here, in the dark, or venture beyond where truth and horror await in equal measure? I hesitated, heart racing in a cacophony of indecision, my pulse thrumming in my ears as the laughter and wailing grew louder, melding into a symphony of despair. The door trembled, ready to vanish at any moment, and I felt time unravel like an unspooled thread. With a primal scream I lunged toward the door, heart pounding as I crossed the threshold. The world exploded into kaleidoscopic chaos, my feet barely touching ground as I was pulled into a cyclone of memories and nightmares as the swirling vortex of shadows engulfed me once more. I sensed fragments of the past screaming by, glimpses of truths never acknowledged crashing against my mind. The crescendo of terror blending into darkness enveloped me, a suffocating embrace, and in that moment of utter silence, I realized I was not alone. Before me, the entity reformed, its hollow eyes boring into my soul. "You chose badly," it grimaced as the world around us crumbled into nothingness. And with a guttural roar, the ground beneath us shattered, swallowing us whole. In the aftermath of the plunge into that gaping maw of night, I found myself suspended in an endless void, neither the sanctuary of earth nor the terror of light. It was an expanse of emptiness so profound, it mocked my earlier fears. The silence was oppressive, thick as fog, yet it was laced with an undercurrent of whispers, inaudible yet undeniably present. A strange sensation wrapped around me, as though invisible tendrils were tracing my skin. They chilled me to the bone, teasing at the periphery of my consciousness, a reminder that I was not alone in this cursed dimension. Threads of memory twisted into my mind. My friends laughing, whispering secrets in the glow of a fire, and then, their faces reshaping into expressions of terror, echoes of their desperation clawing at my heart. I had felt it once, their dread, and now it was my own. "Where are you?" I pleaded into the depths, my voice lost amid the swirling blackness. As if in response, the murmurs intensified, a chorus of despair that surged closer. I struggled to regain my footing, feeling fragmented, as if my essence was scattered like ashes on the wind. Then, almost too sudden to register, a glowing silhouette emerged, vague yet distinct, a figure cloaked in layers of shimmering smoke that shifted and pulsated like a heartbeat. The luminescent form grew clearer, revealing a face I recognized far too well my own. Its expression contorted in a grotesque mimicry of my features, reflecting despair, sorrow, and a twisted sense of mockery. "Do you remember us?" it hissed, voice echoing around me like running water interrupted by sharp stones. "Can you feel the weight of their burdens upon your shoulders? They suffer because of you." Panic clutched at my throat as memories surged once more. Me friends' final moments. They were the innocent souls caught in the crossfire of my reckless pursuit of the unknown. Each laughed word became an accusation, each smile a condemnation. Their spectral forms drifted into view, trapped within the shadows like moths ensnared in a web, their faces pale, eyes wide with horror and betrayal. I trembled, stepping back, only to feel the void swallow my words like a hungry beast. The light flickered, and in its brief brilliance, I grasped at their spectral hands, seeking forgiveness, understanding, something, anything. A shriek broke through the silence, piercing the fabric of my perception. Each scream rattled the foundation of this reality, reverberating against my skull. "You brought us here," they wailed, their ethereal voices merging into a cacophony of pain. "You opened the door." The entity's laughter cut through the air, malicious and triumphant, bending the space around us like a funhouse mirror distorting reality. "You thought you could escape your own darkness?" it crooned, coiling deeper into my mind. "It is not me you face, but yourself, and you will never find peace." Clenching my fists, I retreated into the folds of this dismal theater purgatory of my own creation. Yet the very essence of despair resonated with me, pushing and pulling in a chaotic dance. It felt like drowning while gasping for breath, the gnawing fear of losing myself amid the faces that never truly left. "Listen closely," the entity murmured with fragile gentleness laced with malice. "The truth of their fate lies in the choice you never dared to make." Suddenly, the shadows shuddered, expanding and contracting, morphing into monstrous shapes that swirled menacingly around me. Grasping tendrils reached for my heart, tightening until I could barely breathe. It was never just about you, but the lies you told, it chuckled darkly, the lies you continue to bury. My guts clenched as darkness enveloped me once more. The air was thick, almost liquid, each breath an insufferable effort. And then I saw a door, unearthly light seeping from beneath it, the edges shimmering with the essence of memories lost. What lies beyond? I gasped, eager yet terrified. The ethereal figures of my friends hovered closer, their translucent hands reaching toward me, expressions somber. You must decide once. And for all, they implored silently, before it's too late. The door pulsed invitingly, but the shadows coiled tighter, voices rising again sudden and desperate. Turn away. It is a trap. With a racing heart, I reached for the handle, steeling myself against the malignant energy that bent the shadows to their will. The moment my fingers brushed against the doorknob, the whispers crescendoed, twisting into a primal roar of torment. I flung the door open, and a blinding light poured forth, consuming all darkness, scattering my fragmented thoughts into infinity. The scent of burning me past wrapped around me as the very earth beneath my feet began to dissolve. And at that moment, I was sucked into a new realistic world suspended on the brink of revelation. Before I could fully understand what lay ahead, I felt a searing pain slice through my chest, pulling me back. I looked down, horror-stricken, to see an ethereal hand, one of my friends, thrust from the vortex, grabbing my heart, pulling it back as the shadows laughed in triumph. You will pay the ultimate price, the entity taunted, its voice a bone-chilling echo, and in an instant, darkness and light collided, casting me into an abyss of nightmares yet unfathomed. I fell through the fabric of existence, crashing into a land steeped in an eternal twilight. The ground quaked and writhed beneath me, pulsating like a heart corrupted by rage. Shadows flitted around the edges of my vision, darting just out of reach, but their whispers echoed clearly, a dreadful symphony vibrating through my bones. Each sound seemed to merge into a dissonant chorus proclaiming my name, each syllable dark and hungry. Before I had time to gather my thoughts, I was surrounded by what appeared to be ruins, remnants of an ancient civilization far removed from time and space. Crumbling stone structures loomed like skeletal fingers struggling to grasp the sky. Muffled cries rose from the shadows, between them cries that sounded painfully familiar. I staggered forward, dread pooling in my stomach. Is this what I awakened? I murmured, the weight of guilt wrapping tighter around my heart. Do the lost souls here have ties to my actions? From every craggy crevice, faces twisted in agony emerged. Each one was a reflection of the remorse I carried. Friends, mentors, even strangers who had crossed my path, they were all here in this warped reality, suspended between life and death, fragmented remnants of themselves. A single figure stepped forward, cloaked in rags that obscured their features. I felt the gravity of recognition pull at me, as their visage slowly coalesced into that of my childhood neighbor, Martin. You were supposed to protect us, he whispered, his voice watery and strained, echoing with the pain of betrayal. But your curiosity opened the veil. Cold fingers of regret twisted in my gut, snaking their way up into my throat. I didn't mean to, I stammered. But the words fell like dust into the silence, weightier than a mountain. Didn't mean to? Came a voice from the shadowed temples. Every decision was a choice to forsake us. An enchantress rose from the ruins, her spectral beauty tinged with fury. Those whom you loved, sacrificed by your heedlessness. You think this place binds us? No, we are tethered to you. Here, you will face the consequences of your ignorance. The air thickened, laden with despair, as echoing laughter filled the void around me. It transformed into a rattle, a haunting cacophony of mourning from the shadows that stretched impossibly far. I staggered back, choking on the realization that I might truly be responsible for this, for their suffering and despair. Perhaps it is too late to apologize, Martin whispered, his voice now laced with sheer venom. You will find no absolution here, only echoes of what you have lost. The ground beneath him rippled as if he had disturbed a long-buried wrath, and shadows writhed with increasing fervor, eagerly dancing around me. "Run, child, if you refuse to face the truth." The enchantress' voice shifted into a soothing hiss that raised the fine hairs on my arms. "But remember, every step leads you deeper into the trap of your own making. Here, the darkness is your only companion." My heart raced, torn between the urge to flee and the suffocating need for answers. The shadows beckoned, vortex-like, promising to consume me if I surrendered to fear. But if I stayed, would I be left to contend with the living horrors of my past? Before I could decide, a jagged laugh exploded from the depths of the stone ruins. A monstrous figure rose, head like an ornate crown, eyes voids filled with swirling malice. It loomed over me like a storm about to engulf its prey. In that moment, I instinctively took a step backward, heart pounding. "You want to know the truth?" it bellowed, a drenching wave of darkness cascading around it. "It will cost you more than you dare to pay." I turned to run, the primal instinct to escape sapping every ounce of courage. But as I fled through the maze of stones and echoes, I heard the chants rising, the pleading cries of the weary, trapped souls merging into a singular, desperate "Please stay. Face your demons before they consume you." Suddenly, the very earth trembled, buckling beneath the weight of my decisions, and I was thrown off my feet, crashing once more into an empty void. Yet this time, I landed in a hollow chamber flooded with blinding light, the shadows shrieking with rage as they were torn apart by the brilliance. In the center of the chamber loomed an imposing altar, engraved with symbols I could not comprehend. I realized, as clarity seeped into my mind, that it was a sacrificial tablia vessel for the darkest truths, an ancient ritual trapped within the veins of curses and unfulfilled destinies. Before I could comprehend the scene unfolding around me, shadows coiled at my ankles, ready to pull me back into the darkness from which I had barely escaped. "This is your last chance, before the truth unravels you." The voice rose again, now a dual echo reverberating around the chamber. As I approached the altar, the symbols began to pulse, illuminating the chamber with a sickly glow that warmed my skin but chilled my heart. I could feel my own heartbeat resonating with the inscriptions, the living reminder of the souls I had forsaken. Their stories begged me to listen, to acknowledge their pain before the final curtain fell. But the air thickened with a frigid presence that sent shivers down my spine. The whispers sharpened into screams, drowning my thoughts, warping the words until they lost all meaning. And then came the acute sensation of being watched, many eyes scrutinizing my every move, hungry, waiting for me to falter, with desperation clawing at my throat. I focused on the altar and the glowing symbols dancing before me, the choice weighing heavily on my heart. As a chill raced through the chamber, I dared to reach out, fingers trembling, ready to unveil secrets better left undisturbed. And then, just as contact was imminent, a jagged scream pierced through the air, colder than ice, echoing out of nowhere. I jerked back, only to see the shadows congealing, rapidly dissolving and reforming into something otherworldly. My heart fell into the pit of my stomach, as the nightmare was only just beginning. From behind the altar, a titanic form emerged, draped in darkness, eyes flickering like dying stars. It took a deliberate step forward, and with each movement, I felt reality itself shudder, a nightmare rising. "Welcome home," it rumbled, voice slithering into my mind. "You've brought quite the storm." The monumental shadow loomed before me, eclipsing the feeble light that flickered from the altar. Its form was indistinct, melding with the darkness of the chamber. Yet the weight of its presence was undeniably a sentient void that pulsated with malice and hunger. I staggered back, entranced and horrified, as confusion and fear wrestled for control of my mind. What are you?" I stammered, the words barely escaping my lips as tremors rippled through the air. "I am the keeper of the forgotten, the blood that binds the restless spirits." The figure's voice was thick like tar, seeping into my thoughts and writhing within my core. "You have summoned me with your naive curiosity, and now you must bear witness to what your greed hath wrought." The shadows stirred with a deeper intensity, merging into a panorama of grotesque portraits, faces twisted with torment, souls ensnared by the weight of despair. In every anguished expression, I saw fragments of myself, the choices I had made, the innocence I had sacrificed at the altar of knowledge. Each visage pleaded for acknowledgement, a desperate cry that engulfed my senses. I felt the crushing despair push against me, an insistent tide threatening to drown me. "This is your fault," the Titan hissed, its form shifting, revealing hints of monstrous features roiling within the darkness. "You are as much a part of this hell as I. Your thirst for truth has awakened what was better left to slumber." Suddenly, the air turned icy, and the chamber began to pulsate with a rhythm that echoed the heartbeat of a great beast. The walls trembled, echoing the cries of the forgotten souls, layered with a chilling harmony that seemed to solidify into tangible forms around me. Hands reached out from the stone, clawing at my flesh with invisible tendrils, drawing me closer to the heart of despair they encapsulated. "Help us! Help us!" The voices jumbled together, rising in an agonizing crescendo that shook me to my very core. I stumbled backward, disoriented, frantically scanning the chamber as they evolved into a single Intitya figure forged from swirling shadows. It manifested into a version of me, mirroring my every quirk and nuance, yet twisted into something unfathomably dark, eyes shimmering with a madness that chilled my soul. "You should have never come here," my doppelganger hissed, its voice a sick mockery of my own. "You wanted the truth, but truth is never scar-free. It demands a toll, and yours will be suffocatingly steep." The Titan reared back, cloaked in shadows thick as smoke, its laughter booming and raspy, seeping into my skin. "Yes, the truth," it rumbled. "My gift to you who seek it unearned. But what intrigues me most is what you are willing to sacrifice to escape this wretched binding of fate." That I felt my breath quicken. I've lost enough," I protested, doubt creeping into my heart like a slow poison. "What more can you take? Your fears, your memories," the Titan crooned, "your very essence. And in return, you will have your answers." As the Titan's words resonated, I was engulfed by violent waves of memories, from the joyous laughter of days long past to the gut-wrenching silence following my reckless quest for knowledge. The price became chillingly clear. My identity itself would be irrevocably altered. A seductive whisper trailed through my mind: "You are nothing without your past. Embrace the shattering, and you may find enlightenment instead of madness." The souls clamored more insistently, choking the air with their desperation. "No! Resist!" they screamed in frantic unison. "Remember us. We are the fragments of your truth." But the Titan's presence drugged my will, and as I stood at the precipice of choice, shadows surged, clamoring to wrap around me, to bind me in a cocoon of dark certainty. With a surge of adrenaline, I ripped away, the desperation to escape this looming fate overwhelming. I lunged at the altar, determined to discover the meaning behind its ancient inscriptions, hoping it held the key to my salvation. The symbols flickered, the air stratified with tension, and an echoing heartbeat pulsed through the chamber, resonating with my own. "I refuse," I shouted, my voice trembling against the chorus of voices, yet resolute against the tide of despair. "I demand to know the truth without sacrificing my soul." At that moment, the altar glowed brighter, a blinding light illuminating the dark entity and exposing flickers of the lost souls, their tormented faces pleading for release. The Titan's howl of rage reverberated through the chamber, shaking the very fabric of reality. But just as I felt the surge of hope igniting within me, the entire chamber convulsed violently, the shadows cascading with a ferocity that threatened to tear me apart. The ground split, fissures opening as though the earth itself was rebelling against my declaration, with the deafening crash of shattering stone around me. I grasped the symbols, desperate to unveil their hidden secrets, but in that instant, the floor beneath me erupted, sending me spiraling into an abyss of swirling darkness. "Welcome to your rebirth," the Titan whispered mockingly as I plummeted into the unknown, the truth unraveling above me like a fraying rope. And amid the chaos, I heard Ida's new voice faintly emanating from the depths, cutting through the tumult. "You've come too far. Now what will you become?" The darkness swallowed me whole, a viscous void that clawed at my sanity, constricting my thoughts like a serpent. My body twisted and turned in the endless shadow, weightless and suffocated simultaneously, the air thick with lingering dread. Silence engulfed me, yet the echoes of desperate pleas and twisted laughter gnawed at the edges of consciousness. The freefall seemed eternal, but soon I slammed onto an uneven surface cold and slick. The ground felt alive beneath my palm. I pushed myself upright, heart pounding furiously in my chest, mind racing to make sense of my spiraling descent. The environment around me shifted slowly into a grotesque cavern riddled with unsettling symbols similar to those on the altar, the air laden with decay and malevolence, illuminated only by a shimmering phosphorescence that glowed from sporadic patches on the wall. The subterranean realm sprawled around me like a nightmare sprung to life. What had once been a collection of frantic notes on papyrus now drifted through my mind, weaving the disconcerting tapestry of this unforeseen terror. I recalled the secret archives I'd uncovered, the whispered rumors about the ancient rituals performed by those once intoxicated by power. But the most chilling revelation settled in my gut. The whispers through the ages had always hinted at this, the chance encounters, the intonations of the forgotten souls, all leading to this very abyss. A scuttling sound drew my attention, a haunting symphony of skittering claws echoing through the stillness. I turned sharply, teeth clenched and heart racing, fingers curling into fists. Out of the shadows crept a grotesque ghoul, its form a grotesque mockery of humanity, a twisted caricature with elongated limbs and sunken eyes that reflected an agony that transcended my understanding. It paused, tilting its head at the sharp angle of a broken branch before inching toward me, emanating a palpable dread. A cold sweat broke over me as I backed away, the cryptic symbols behind me glowing brighter as I neared them, their flickering light accentuating terror etched into the creature's face. "Stop!" I shouted, voice trembling, the sound unnaturally flat in the cavernous chamber. "What do you want?" The creature halted, a chilling, silent recognition radiating from its sunken eyes. It stepped closer, its love for torment evident in the widening rictus of its mouth, brackish drool pooling on the cavern floor. "Escape?" it croaked, the word a weathered groan that lingered menacingly in the air. "Or truth?" A shiver danced down my spine. Even amidst the horror, the creature bore a hint of kinship, a reflection of my own internal turmoil mirroring its despair. It became excruciatingly clear that the walls of my very soul were closing in this chamber of nightmares. "Follow me," it hissed, gesturing with a claw-like finger toward a passage that twisted further into the darkened depths. My instincts screamed against the idea of submission, yet a magnetic pull urged me forward, a deep urge to unearth the dark secrets this place harbored, to understand what truly lay within, without waiting for my consent. The creature turned and scuttled back into the shadows, along the passageway that seemed to pulsate in rhythmic tandem with my heartbeat. Against my better judgment, I chased its fleeting silhouette, propelled by both dread and intrigue that sought answers like moths to flame. As I carved through the narrow corridor, the silence was pervaded by faint echoes, mournful whispers swirling around me, coercing me to recall the very memories I sought to outrun. The air thickened, and with every step, pressure seeped into my chest, igniting primal fear. Who were these people? My mind raced, recalling the faces I had seen loomed around the Titan. "Those who sought what you seek." The voice of the creature rang out from the darkness, destruction, knowledge, the bond of blood and fate. Its words sent icy fingers crawling over my skin. But knowledge is but a heavy burden. Those who partook have paid dearly and are forever trapped as echoes. A sick realization crept into my veins. Were these whispers the remnants of those who had dared awaken the Titan before me? As if in answer to my horror-fueled thoughts, a deep rumbling shook the ground, and the wall of shadows flared briefly in an eerie light, revealing fleeting faces twisted in agony, all reaching toward me. "No!" I screamed, crumpling to the floor. "I won't be one of you." The chamber seemed to shudder with approval, loud enough to drown my protest but soft enough that I could still hear the creature's rasping laughter as it slowly emerged from the dark once more. "Then you must choose wisely, seeker of truth. The darkness knows your name, and it hungers still." I scrambled to my feet, pulse racing, knowing this was only the beginning of whatever awaited ahead. But before I could ponder escape, the shadows spilled forth, the cavern walls trembling and undulating like a serpent poised to strike. Within the depths, I could hear echoes of a new voice, thin and candid yet twisted with anguish, cutting through the oppressive silencia whisper emanating from a place I dreaded to explore. It's not over, you're more connected to this than you know. And suddenly, a piercing scream broke the tension, not from the shadows but from deeper within the passage. My heart leaped into my throat, my instincts kicking in. I had to see what awaited beyond, a knot of terror and anticipation threading through my being. As I took a hesitant step forward, uncertain yet compelled, the shadows thickened, collapsing around me and blocking my path. Just as I struggled to push through the darkness, a vision of my own face twisted and ghastly like the creature flashed before my eyes, a menacing reminder of the price I was preparing to pay. Make your choice, it hissed, the path before me dimming into suffocating black. I could almost taste the terror in the air, a reminder that no matter how hard I fought, dread would always be a part of me. In that instant, a distant lantern flickered to life at the end of the passage's solitary light against the encroaching dark. But as my mind screamed to run toward it, another answer simmered deep within, wrapping itself around me like a vizier reality I could not escape. This was not just a choice of light or dark, but of the very essence of who I was. Would I emerge to unearth the haunted truth, or would I become yet another whisper lost in the shadows of despair? And then, as if confirming this terrible fate, the walls began to close in around me, the echoes transforming into a cacophony that drowned out my very thoughts. In that moment, I knew I was running out of time. None of it would matter if I couldn't find my way out. But just as the darkness loomed to consume me entirely, a glint of hope dared to linger beyond my grasp, its potential to shatter my reality just a whisper away. Your fate awaits. The voice of the darkness taunted, run or face the truth. The cavern pulsed around me, the very air quaking with the weight of the truth it contained. I stood there, suspended between the light beckoning me forward and the darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. The whispers crescendoed to a maddening chorus, voices intertwining into a symphony of despair, fueling my primal need to choose my path as dread coiled around my heart. But just as my resolve wavered, the flickering light at the end of the passage ignited something deep within me, a flicker of defiance against the abyss. Perhaps the truth was indeed a darkness that consumed, but it was also a bomb that could reveal the hidden corners of my soul in desperate need of absolution. Almost without thought, I surged forward, propelled by the essence of my very being, the memories of my friends flooding my mind. And then, everything shattered. The moment I stepped into the light, reality morphed, and I found myself submerged in a tidal wave of memories, a whirlpool of laughter and tears, an echoing testament of the lives intertwined with mine. Yet the realm felt different now. The cavern around me dissolved into silhouettes that writhed and twisted like wisps of smoke. Instead of overwhelming despair, I was enveloped with warmth, the familiar presence of my friends pulsating through me. But horror swiftly pierced the veils of comforting reverie. The radiant light revealed the true nature of what surrounded me. Not just memories, but faces twisted in anguish, contorted forever in the thrall of a curse unleashed by my own recklessness. It was a truth I had long buried, evading the weight of their fate, only to awaken it in this moment of clarity. Your past doesn't just torment you, it feeds on your guiltiness. A voice from the depths of my memories spoke, the face of my friend Lucia materializing, tears cascading down her cheeks. By seeking to unveil secrets that were meant to remain hidden, you opened the cursed door, and we followed. No, I cried, the truth crashing down on me like a tidal wave. I didn't mean to. The shadows whispered my name, their grip tightening, deceiving me into believing I could abrogate responsibility. I thought you could escape, she continued, her eyes hollow with despair and helplessness. But now, we are trapped here until you face what you inadvertently unleashed, your truth. The world trembled around me, swirling as the figures coalesced into a single form, a towering visage reflecting my own, but with streaks of darkness fracturing its features. You thought you could claim salvation without confronting the consequences. This shadow, it rasped, is an echo of your guilt, of every soul lost under your hand. The realization struck me hard. Me friends had not perished at the hands of fate, but by my own insatiable desire for discovery, driven by curiosity that led to consequences I could never have predicted. The door I had opened was not merely a threshold to a room of shadows but a gateway to the depths of my own soul, one where the dark truth lingered just beyond reach. Hungry for retribution, a pulse of enlightenment surged through me even amid the chaos. I stepped forward into the haunting glow, breaking free from the chains of denial, embracing the weight of my reckoning. I cannot change the past, I declared, my voice steady yet filled with burdened sorrow. But I will not deny it any longer. Let me bear the weight of my actions. And as the words escaped my lips, the ground shook violently, shadows swirling with cataclysmic wrath, the air crackling with energy. Yet at the heart of the turbulence, an echo of hope emerged, a brilliance blindingly pure, the radiant light consuming the darkness, illuminating the faces of my lost friends, their expressions shifting from pain to soft acceptance. Their whispers entwined, melding together, "Forgive yourself, for together we create the path to salvation." I felt warmth wrap around me, the love of 1,000 lifetimes enveloping my heart. I was not just facing my demons together, we would shatter the weight of memory that held us captive. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony as I opened my arms wide, allowing the light to consume me, transforming despair into liberation. And then came the ultimate twist. The final truth unveiled itself, siphoning the darkness from my essence. With every breath I took, I wove a tapestry of connection between my shattered self and the lives entwined with mine, each thread shining with an iridescence painted by the graces of forgiveness and love. The darkness shrieked and dissipated, revealing a radiant portal behind me. Yet even amid the light, a dark tendril of doubt clawed at my resolve. The cacophony faded, but I heard a chilling whisper, a disquieting promise. You have escaped, but the shadows will always linger. They are part of you. As I crossed the threshold of the glowing portal, I left behind more than just the nightmare. I left the echoes of who I once was. And yet, beneath it all, a chilling realization took root. I had freed my friends and shattered the chains of my guilt, but now, I was wholly intertwined with my darkness, an eternal guardian of the truths I once sought to evade. And as the portal closed behind me, sealing that world away, I understood with dreadful clarity. Knowing the truth demanded a price, and I would never be free of what I had awakened. The shadows, though silent, whispered my name, the haunting echo trailing behind me as I stepped into an uncertain future. You can never truly escape, they mocked, reminding me where I belonged, split forever between light and dark, a relentless duality that would follow wherever I went.